Once when I was in my 20s, I think my kids were little, they were sort of about 4 or 5, I don't know, and the world was still wonderful and everything was working out. And I was just starting to understand how horrendous life is. The priest in charge of our church was a canon. Was he a canon? I don't know, he might have been higher up. He was a really high up guy, and he had had an amazing career in the hierarchy of the Anglican Church. He'd been very influential. And he had retired to the sort of like small church, which is the normal path for priests in the Anglican Church. And he was there in charge of the church that I went to when I was trying to stop my marriage from falling apart. The first time when I was still a human being. And I told my mum that I'd gone to this church and there was this guy there, and she said, "Oh, that guy. He married Dad and I." So they fell pregnant with me, right? This was back in 1963 when that wasn't done. Didn't behave like that. And my mother was cut out of her family's will. Completely cut out. And she phoned her dad and told her that she was pregnant. And he said, "Oh, okay, we'll give you a wedding. Quickly come down and we'll do everything." And then he phoned her back 10 minutes later and said, "Oh no, your stepmother says no, what would the neighbours think? So it's off, you get your own wedding." So Dad went and organised the licence, and there was something about a public holiday, and they couldn't get the licence, and they had to do something. I don't know, maybe you had to get blood tests back in the day to see if you were compatible to have children. Apparently my granny, my dad's mom, went to the wedding in a black and green dress. That was all because of me. All that shame that my mother endured by getting pregnant was because she got pregnant with me. I have felt that. I've felt that burden. And it's so interesting that I have felt that burden, because I don't know what the real story is. I just know how I have construed it like I was that kid. I also know that a therapist made me aware of the fact that I was the baby. I was the one that stopped my mum and dad from having their wonderful lives and made them have this difficult life that they've had. I don't know. Does it make any sense? Doesn't really make any sense. However, I think the point of what I was trying to say was that these issues that we carry with us from our childhood are things that we concoct. All the terrible hurts and abandonments and rejections and wounds, all those things that we carry, all we carry is our version of events. The world is so much bigger. Anyway, so sorry about that little sort of rambly ramble. The thing that I was going to say really was that I've been thinking about Job again. And when I mentioned Job the other day, I mentioned his sorrow in terms of the things that he had lost. You know, his children and his wives and his material possessions. And all those things are things that I've lost and will probably continue to lose as things go along. However, the thing that I'm totally not wanting to face is the disease. And I think that's why I got hooked into telling you about that church and the weird coincidences with the priest there. At that church, at that time of my life, I met a man who had skin cancer on his head. Obviously a farmer, obviously not a massively successful rancher, just a guy who had spent his whole life slogging in the sun to feed his family. And he had skin cancer on his head. Lots and lots of sunspots and pigmentations. And this massive piece of scalp and skin, and the bloody bits showed through, and it was all putrefying and I don't know what it was. That's my construction and my memory of it. It was horrible to behold. It was hard to speak to him and look him in the eye, as my eyes wanted to go in fascination to this ruin of his head and what the cancer was doing. A patch about as big as my palm. It got bigger and bigger over time, and then my life fell apart and I couldn't go to church anymore because I was one of the sinners, not one of the forgiven. Yeah, it changes your attitude a lot, you know, when you step into one of the permanent sinful states, like divorcee. So, skin cancer. Job lost everything, and then his entire body got consumed with skin cancer, and he sat around with nothing, in the dust on the side of the road, in the clothes he stood up in. That's what was left after all his life, and skin cancer eating into his body. He was watching himself rot away. Yeah, you see, suffering, man, suffering. It's a feature, not a glitch, a feature. Right, well, you see, and I think this comes back to discussing what love is and what God is that love and God are not nice things. Love and God are about the reality of the situation that we find ourselves in. Is that our single common purpose as a species has been to try and escape from the suffering of earth, from the weather that is so unpleasant, hot, cold, wet, dry, miserable, just dark, light, just weather. We built these houses to live in. We built medicine to protect ourselves against these horrible diseases that destroy us. Those snakes alive. And I don't know about you, but I forget living this extraordinarily privileged life as a Westerner. I mean, this is the crest of the wave, guys. Okay, the wave's crashing, and we're riding out the last bit, and it's a bit sad. But this is it. This is the best it's ever been in the history of mankind. And we get to sit here in the morning on the sofa with the sun streaming through the window that's full of cobwebs and dust, and wouldn't be full of cobwebs and dust if I was a proper householder. But am I? No, I'm not. I'm unbelievably skillful at being lazy. Anyway, so the point. The point. Is there a point, Bob Dub? Do you have points? Or are you just all rough edges without points? Aimless. Okay. Attempting to find aim, focus, concentration, be here in the moment. Job lost all his connections with his people and then developed disease. So his suffering was not just the sorrow of the past, but the misery of the present. And I suppose the conversation that he has is a conversation of searching for a future. Because why else do you turn to God? Why would you? What is the point of interacting with this being? I mean, it doesn't talk to you, and it doesn't give you the things you want. And if you ask for something, it will present you with a hideous circumstance in which to obtain that thing. So the price of getting what you want is so huge that it really is a good idea to not ask for anything. So why interact with that creature, entity, life form? Nah, it's like a pre-life form, isn't it? It's the precursor to life, bigger than life, and yet more helpless than life. Helpless in the sense that it cannot manipulate events in the way that you and I, in our frail and fragile little flesh mechas that we drive, we can manipulate things that God cannot manipulate. I can make myself a cup of chai. I can torment my cat. Buddha's getting used to grooming. It's nice now. He was part of a very big family in a breeding unit, and he was unwanted, my little pussykins. No. Sorry, Bud. His mama had been unfaithful and had copulated with the cat next door. And so this little boy was born with white bits on his underneath, and that's unacceptable for a Bengal. And so he was abused as a youngster, pushed out of the tribe, considered not good enough. And they all fought for food, and there was, I don't know. So he's a funny little cat, and he was very, very nervous when he came to us, very, very cowed. And the lady who bred them said that you have to be very, very strict with Bengals when they're little, because they're so big and rough and fierce and strong and pushy and demanding that they can try and dominate you. So, I don't know. There we go again. There I go, putting all my projections onto my cat and creating an abusive childhood for him. Dear, I'm trying to get over it, guys, okay? I'm sorry. It's like when you're standing in the mud, you tend to notice mud a lot. The mud's there, you're trying to get out of the mud's on you, everywhere you go there's mud. It's just mud. Okay, I'm trying to clean the mud off me. It just takes a little while for me to stop talking about these things and to start. And that reminds me of what I'm meant to be talking about. I'm meant to be talking about God. I'm meant to be talking about why do we bother to interact with this spiritual being. I don't know. I'm going to need to think of a word for it. It's hard to. Anyway. So why? Why? Maybe I'm psychologically a 2-year-old today. Why, Mama? Why? Why do we want to talk to God? So my point was that it's not the past. We don't need to interact with God about the past, because there already is a story for us to understand the past. And the story is about the Son of God who was crucified, and in return for that bargain, the God agreed to forgive humans all their sins for all time, because of what God experienced in watching his Son voluntarily give up his life for his friends. That had such a profound impact on God that God responded to it by forgiving us of everything bad we have ever done. So there's no need to ever interact with this entity about the past, because it's signed and sealed and delivered. So you accept it and you move on. So your next opportunity, your next option is to interact with this God about the present. As I point out to you, don't ever ask for anything. The price is too high. You can't change the path of karma without a huge karmic cost. So it is a very bad idea to interact with the entity, to try and request things from it. So that's not relevant to present interactions. And so the only thing that's left is the future. And so what could the spiritual entity offer me for my future? Is there, this is the one thing that I haven't yet explored. This is the turning point between mental ill health and mental health. If I can achieve this, if I can turn my mind around to stop focusing on the mud and focus on all things that are good and noble and admirable and worthy, because that's where mental health is in the contemplation of those things. Because then your brain actually, I don't know about your brain, my brain feels different, physically feels different. I almost sometimes feel tingles through my brain when I manage to make that transition from thinking about all the griefs and sorrows and miseries and losses in my life to thinking about all things noble and good. I don't even know what that is. I'm sitting here and I'm looking out at the sky and it's blue and it seems noble and it's up there. And I feel that there's something. And I can't understand it yet. But I feel that it's somehow related to becoming a part of something. The thing that I've been talking about for years, about Rat City. The interesting thing to me about the Rat City experiment is that the rats slowly became less addicted. There's this idea in the mainstream world that things are a continuum, is that you're sort of on a balance and you can move freely up and down between sadness and happiness. And it's mind control that pushes you towards the side of the happiness spectrum. And the thing is that works in mentally healthy minds. But then when you fall off that continuum, when you move to a different set of functioning, I don't know, you can't explain it really. I believe that this transition that I'm trying to make, where I am trying to stop looking at the finger and start looking at the moon, I can't think that the moon can be anything less than God. It must be the most admirable and the most noble and the most challenging and the most exciting and the most abundant. It must be the pinnacle of spiritual existence. I think this is why I disagree with the idea of studying aliens and why it's so hard to find my attitude towards this conversation of aliens that seems to be happening amongst human beings. I understand that we're exploring a concept and that we're integrating an attitude and that we're growing up as a species by looking at life outside this planet. But I believe that it's gone too far. It's like Schrodinger's cat in the stupid box. Like there's this time of the cat being in the box and you not being in control or aware of what's happening. And you open the box and then what was happening when you didn't know is still happening now when you now start to know. When you begin to observe, what you're observing is something that already happened. You just didn't know. And so what happened was suddenly you became aware of something. Yeah, the world is interesting. I am struggling to find a way to understand what people are looking for when they are looking at aliens. Why have they shifted their attention off their friends and onto strangers? And not just onto strangers that are in the next country or in the next species or stuff, but strangers that are in another galaxy through millions and millions of miles of vacuum. For why? Why do you want to know those guys? Why are you structuring your life about all there is to know about mantis people and all there is to know about grey people and all there is to know about tall people? Why? I don't understand. What about me? Do you want to know everything about me? Do you want me to know everything about you? Do you want to join your mind and your soul with my mind and soul? Do you care that much about me? Because I'm alive and I'm here. And it's not just me of me in this body. It's that other me and that other me, all those people all around you. Do you know their birthdays? Do you know when their dog died? Do you know their joys and their hopes? Why do you care about what imaginary creatures on the other side of the world or ancient religious practices of other cultures, or all sorts of things that are fascinating. But they're all finger. What is moon? I think that maybe moon is God. Maybe God is moon. Maybe being unable to define it is a result of the fact that we don't know each other well enough to be able to understand where each other are coming from in the basic fundamental concepts of reality. And so there we go. It's so frustrating for me. Like, it's fun to know what you know and to interact with what you know, but that can happen in body world, and this is here and now, and we're standing on the edge of a whole new way of being able to manipulate our minds. Sometimes I wonder if everybody else in the world does this, and that's why they can't see what they're doing. They just do it, and they're on the inside of being connected with everybody else. And it's only because I'm experiencing this really strange process of going through being a rat all by itself in a cage to a rat in a rat park, running around through rat tunnels and looking at rat Easter eggs and playing rat games. Somehow there's an amount that my brain is able to accept and understand. And somehow I'm sitting here watching myself form connections and overcome issues, and I'm amazed to have discovered God. God, the fact, the facts, the reality. All right, well, so I think that the thing about changing from finger to moon is that it's both gradual and sudden. You need to be both material and spiritual. You need to stand in the middle of all the paradoxes and find balance, because there is right and wrong. There is a way that helps and a way that doesn't help. There is a way that is skillful and a way that is unskillful. There isn't a middle ground, and there are not millions of options. It's like the Abhidharma says, that wonderful, wonderful picture of reality flashing in and out and in and out and in and out. Every single second is a new second, and it came from nowhere and it goes to nowhere. And that means that you're always fully empowered to be you, to be yourself, to reach deep down through all the dimensions, I don't know, are there 7 or 11? I can never remember how many dimensions there are. But they get smaller and smaller. The more dimensions you add on, the tinier the space becomes, until the space is so small, because there's so many dimensions, the space has become so small that it no longer exists. And then it coincides back again with the first dimension, which also doesn't exist, and which is the spiritual realm. And so there's this amazing loop, conceptual loop, that goes round and round and round. And you can jump into it, you can jump into it, and you can experience that eternity of wonder. But the only point to clearing your mind and your heart and your soul like this is to join it with other people, with friends. And if you're spending all your time concentrating on things instead of on people, that's to me when you're looking at the finger and not at the moon. And that's my objection to studying aliens. So you are my alien and I am your alien. Are you studying me? Am I studying you? Do we understand each other's ebbs and flows? Are we able to support each other in our strivings for acceptance, understanding, healing, growth, engagement, productivity, all these things we can build together as a community. I don't know. I have these dreams and these visions. I believe that the patterns are the things. We've lost the pattern of the nuclear family, and we need to get back to it. And it's like going back down through the dimensions. We're in this diffuse state of disconnected society. We have to come back to community. We have to come back to knowing each other like this. Then once we can come back to knowing each other like this in little groups and understanding each other's points of view and knowing each other's birthdays and celebrating the day that the other came to be here on earth with us. Isn't that lovely? We're here together in this horrible world, facing these real difficulties and crying these real tears. Oh well. I've talked way too long. But Job, Job. In the end, I think that the answer to Job's suffering was the same answer that the Buddha found when he was awakened, is that this is how it's always been. We weren't there at the beginning, or we were. Maybe we were there at the beginning. Maybe we were Adam. Maybe we have been every single person that's ever been. And now we're us. And we're you, and we're each other, and we're all one great life force that flows from this central and pivotal life force. So, the moon, looking at the moon.